Imagine, if you will, that you are a master craftsman. Not just any craftsman, but one of profound skill and patience. Over years, through countless hours of focused effort, you have learned to shape the most beautiful, intricate creations from the raw materials of the earth. Your life's work culminates in one particular piece of vase. This isn't just a vessel of fired clay. It is a story. Its curves speak of resilience, its glaze holds the depth of a twilight sky, and its form has a quiet, dignified strength that only comes from a true and centered hand. It is, in every sense of the word, a masterpiece. It is the physical manifestation of your dedication, your soul, your innate and undeniable worth. Now, imagine you take this vase, this piece of your very essence, and you present it to someone. Someone whose opinion, for reasons you can't quite articulate, has become the sun in your sky. You hold it out with trembling hands, your heart echoing the fragile hope that they will see it, that they will truly see its value, its depth, its story. But they don't. They glance at it, their eyes vacant, perhaps even dismissive. It's nice, they might say, their attention already drifting to a row of cheap mass-produced tin cups on a nearby shelf. But does it hold as much as these? It seems a bit delicate. And in that moment, a cold dread begins to creep in. The external world, in the form of this one person's indifference, has just cast a long, dark shadow over your truth. So what do? The quiet desperation begins. You start to explain. You point out the subtle nuances of the glaze you describe, the difficult technique used to achieve its perfect curve. You recount the long years it took to master your craft. The words tumble out a frantic, pleading cascade. You are now a lawyer for your own value, presenting evidence to a judge who isn't even listening. The silence that greets your explanation is heavier than any argument. So, you try something else. A more painful strategy. You think, maybe if I change it, maybe then they'll see. You take a file and you scrape away a bit of the unique shimmering glaze, trying to make it look more rustic, more like the tin cups they seem to admire. You add a clumsy handle distorting the perfect symmetry you worked so hard to achieve. You begin to systematically dismantle the very qualities that made the vase a masterpiece, all in the faint, desperate hope of winning the approval of someone who is never capable of appreciating it in the first place. You are breaking your own creation to beg for a crumb of validation. Does this little story resonate? Perhaps not with a vase of clay, but with something far more precious. Perhaps it was a business idea you poured your soul into, only to have it dismissed by a mentor you revered. Perhaps it was an act of profound kindness and vulnerability in a relationship, offered to a partner who met it with a wall of indifference. Perhaps it's the quiet daily work of being a good parent, a loyal friend, a dedicated employee, a constant output of your energy and care that goes seemingly unnoticed and unappreciated by the very people you wish would see it most. This slow, aching erosion of the self in the face of external indifference is one of the most universal and painful human experiences. We have all at some point stood there holding our metaphorical vase, wondering why the world refuses to see its worth. This is the precipice where so many of us get lost. We stand at this critical juncture, and we make a fateful choice. We decide that the observer's valuation is more real than the intrinsic value of the object itself. We begin to believe that their indifference is a reflection of our lack of worth, rather than a simple reflection of their own limited perception. And this is the foundational error, the first step on a long road to self-abandonment. The ancient Stoic philosophers, men who navigated the treacherous worlds of Roman politics, exile and war, understood this dynamic with profound clarity. They weren't emotionless statues as the modern caricature suggests. They were deeply engaged with the messiness of life. But they possessed a powerful tool, a mental framework that acted as an anchor in the storm of human affairs. At the heart of this framework was a simple but life-altering distinction, understanding the difference between what is within our control and what is not. Epictetus, a man who was born a slave and rose to become one of the most respected philosophical teachers of his time, put it most bluntly. He taught that we control our thoughts, our judgments, our actions, our responses. These are our inner kingdom, the domain where we are the undisputed sovereign. But what lies outside of our control? Well, almost everything else. The weather, the economy, the past, and most importantly for our conversation today, the opinions, perceptions, and validation of other people. Trying to control what others think of us, he argued, is not only a futile endeavor, it is the very definition of insanity. It is like trying to command the tide to stop or the sun to rise in the west. It is a recipe for perpetual frustration and sorrow. When you are standing there holding your vase, their reaction is the tide. It is entirely outside of your control. You cannot force them to have good taste. You cannot compel them to possess the depth of spirit required to see your work for what it is. You cannot argue them into appreciation. Your frantic explanations, your desperate attempts to change your creation, these are the acts of someone trying to command the tide. And the only result is that you get swept away, losing your own footing, your own center. The Stoic alternative is not to become cold or to stop caring. It is not to smash the vase in a fit of nihilistic rage. No, it is far more radical and far more empowering. The alternative is to turn your attention away from the indifferent observer and back toward the masterpiece in your own hands. It is to gently set it down, not in defeat, but in reverence. It is to know its value so deeply, so completely, so unshakably in your own soul, that the validation of the outside world ceases to be a necessity. It might be a pleasant bonus, like a warm breeze on a summer day, but it is not the sun. It is not the source of light. The light comes from the thing itself. The light comes from you. The great Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals what we now call his meditations. He wasn't writing for an audience. He was writing to himself, reminding himself of these core truths amidst the immense pressure of ruling an empire. He spoke of building an inner citadel, a fortress within your own mind that no external chaos or opinion could ever breach. He wrote, "Be like the promontory against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." This inner citadel is not built of stone and mortar. It is built of self-knowledge and self-acceptance. Its foundation is the deep, quiet, unshakable knowing of your own worth independent of applause or criticism. When you have this fortress, you can still go out into the world. You can still offer your creations, your love, your kindness. But you do so from a place of strength, not of need. You offer it as a gift, freely given, without the desperate attachment to how it will be received. If it is appreciated, you feel a quiet joy. If it is dismissed, you feel a quiet compassion for the one who could not see, and then you retreat back to the safety and warmth of your inner citadel, your value wholly intact. You have not been diminished. The promontory stands firm. For many of us, especially as we navigate our 30s, 40s, and 50s, we come to realize how much of our lives have been spent performing for an audience. We've been chasing promotions to impress a boss who barely knows our name, maintaining friendships that drain our energy, or contorting ourselves to fit the expectations of a partner or family. We are tired of the performance, tired of the frantic explanations, tired of chipping away at our own beautiful vase. The exhaustion you feel is a sacred signal. It's your soul telling you that the strategy of seeking worth outside of yourself has run its course. It is no longer sustainable. So, the first step on this new path, this path of reclaiming your power, is not a grand dramatic action. It is a quiet internal shift. It is the simple, gentle act of withdrawing your attention from the indifferent observer. It is to stop pleading your case in the imaginary courtroom of their opinion. It is to give up the exhausting, soul-crushing project of trying to control the uncontrollable. It is to turn your gaze with kindness and with reverence back toward yourself. To look at the vase you are holding, your character, your talents, your history of survival, your capacity for love, and to finally truly see it for yourself. Before we can expect anyone else to recognize our value, we must first cease to betray it ourselves. We must become its guardian, its most loyal advocate, its quiet, unwavering witness. This is not a journey of arrogance or egotism. In fact, it is the opposite. It is a journey toward humility. The humility of accepting that you cannot change others, and the dignity that comes from taking full responsibility for the one thing you can, the state of your own soul. And so, our journey together begins here, not with learning a trick to make them see, but with cultivating the strength to no longer need them to. It begins with the decision to stop outsourcing your sense of self and to finally lovingly bring it back home. The first task is to simply recognize that you have been holding a masterpiece all along, and the quiet power that begins to build from that one simple recognition is the force that will change everything that follows. And so, we find ourselves at the beginning of a profound homecoming. We have made the quiet, courageous decision to turn our gaze away from the indifferent audience and back toward the masterpiece in our hands. We have acknowledged, perhaps for the first time in a long while, that its value is inherent, not bestowed. It is a powerful, peaceful realization. But as we stand in this newfound stillness, a new set of questions begins to surface. If this value has always been here residing within us, why have we been so blind to it? What has been clouding our vision? What are the subtle forces that have consistently pulled our attention outward, convincing us to seek validation in the barren lands of external opinion? Before we can truly build that inner citadel that Marcus Aurelius spoke of, we must first become honest cartographers of our own inner world. We must map the terrain, identify the well-worn paths that lead us away from our center, and understand the subtle architecture of our own self-abandonment. This is not an exercise in self-criticism or blame. Far from it. This is an act of gentle archaeology. We are not looking for flaws to condemn, but for patterns to understand. With the patient curiosity of an archaeologist brushing dust from an ancient artifact, we must begin to examine the invisible chains we have allowed to be placed upon us, and, more often than not, have helped to forge ourselves. The first artifact we often uncover in this dig is the habit of over-explaining. Think about it for a moment. Reflect on the last time you said no to something. A request for your time, an invitation you didn't wish to accept, a demand on your energy. What happened immediately after the no left your lips? For many of us, a torrent of justification follows. I can't because I have this other commitment. Or, I'm so sorry, but I'm feeling a little tired. Or a long rambling story designed to soften the blow, to prove that our no is legitimate. We present a closing argument for a case that should have required no trial. On the surface, this seems like a polite, considerate thing to do. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But let us look deeper with our archaeologist's eye. What is the unspoken message beneath this habit? Every time we feel compelled to justify a boundary, we are implicitly communicating that the boundary itself is not enough. We are saying, my no is not valid on its own. It requires your approval, your understanding, your permission to exist. We are handing over the authority for our own decisions. We are taking the key to our own gate and asking the other person if it's okay for us to lock it. This single, seemingly innocuous habit is a crack in the foundation of our inner citadel. It's a silent confession that we do not fully trust our own right to govern ourselves. The second artifact we find, often lying right beside the first, is the way we treat our most precious non-renewable resources, our time and our energy. The philosopher Seneca, a man who understood the frantic and often wasteful pace of Roman life, wrote with piercing wisdom on this very subject. He famously noted, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Think of your energy as a finite amount of pure, clean water in a well each morning. This water is what you use to grow, to love, to create, to heal. Now, who do you allow to draw from your well?" We often give unlimited access to people who arrive with empty buckets and a sense of entitlement. The friend who only calls to complain, but is never available to listen. The family member who consistently creates drama, leaving you emotionally exhausted. The colleague who offloads their responsibilities onto you. We allow them to draw and draw and draw, and we rarely ask if they will help to replenish the well. We make ourselves endlessly available, hoping that our generosity will one day be recognized and reciprocated. But what we are actually teaching them is that our water is cheap, that our time has no value. We devalue our own currency through our limitless supply. A true and centered person understands that their energy is sacred. They give it generously, but not indiscriminately. They know that a well that is always emptied for others will have nothing left for its owner. They are not a public fountain, they are a deep private spring, and access to it is a privilege earned through mutual respect and care. As we dig deeper, we uncover something even more subtle, yet profoundly important. We find the ghost of our own physical wisdom. Our bodies have been speaking to us for years, but we have been taught to ignore their language. Consider the physical sensations that accompany self-betrayal. That slight tightening in your chest when you agree to a commitment you know you don't have the energy for. the knot that forms in your stomach just before you have to interact with a person who consistently undermines you. The wave of profound exhaustion that washes over you the moment you walk away from a draining social encounter. This is not just random physical noise. This is your body, your oldest and most loyal companion, sending you clear, unmistakable signals. It is saying, "This is not right. This is costing us too much. This path leads away from our well-being." But we override it. We use our logical minds to say, "Don't be silly. You have to do this. It's the polite thing to do. Don't cause a problem." We silence the most honest advisor we have. We have been conditioned to trust external voices over our own internal truth, and our bodies bear the physical burden of that disconnect. Learning to value yourself begins with learning to listen to yourself again, to honor that tightness in the chest as valid data, to respect that knot in your stomach as a crucial piece of intelligence from the front lines of your life. And this leads us to perhaps the most dangerous artifact of all, because it is almost invisible. It is the slow, corrosive poison of the small daily compromise. Grand betrayals are easy to identify. If someone steals from you or deceives you in a major way, you know the boundary has been crossed. The real damage to our self-worth doesn't usually come from a single catastrophic event. It comes from a death by 1,000 cuts. It's the slightly condescending joke from a partner that you let slide with a forced laugh. It's staying silent in a meeting when someone takes credit for your idea. It's saying, "It's fine," when you are in fact not fine at all. It's consistently putting your own simple needs for rest, for quiet, for time alone at the very bottom of the priority list, beneath the trivial wants of everyone else around you. Each of these moments in isolation seems too small to make a fuss about, but they are not insignificant. Each one is a tiny grain of sand you are giving away from your own shore. Each one is a small chip you are making in your own beautiful vase. And over the years, these thousands of small concessions create a massive cumulative erosion of self-respect. You wake up one day and wonder why you feel so invisible, so powerless, so hollow. It is because you have slowly, imperceptibly given yourself away, piece by piece, in 1,000 moments you told yourself didn't matter. Recognizing these patterns, the over-explaining, the devaluing of your energy, the ignoring of your body's wisdom, and the poison of small compromises is the essential first step. This is the cartography of your freedom. You are not looking back with regret, but forward with awareness. You are simply taking stock. You are seeing with clear and compassionate eyes the mechanics of how your power has been siphoned away. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that the most important job of a student of life is to scrutinize their own assent. This means to pay close attention to what we agree to, not just with our words, but with our silence, with our inaction. Every time we let a small disrespect slide, we are giving it our assent. We are co-signing the behavior. We are saying, "This is an acceptable way to treat me." So as we stand here having dusted off these artifacts from our past, we are now armed with a new and powerful awareness. We can see the invisible chains. We can feel their weight. We understand that they were not forged by others alone. We handed them the hammer and the heat. This knowledge is not a burden. It is a key. Because the moment you see the lock, you can begin to search for the way to open it. Now that we have identified how we give our value away, the next question on our journey becomes one of action. It is a question that can feel both terrifying and liberating. How do we begin to break these chains, not all at once in a grand explosive gesture, but gently, deliberately, and with unshakable resolve? How do we utter our first complete and unapologetic no? How do we reclaim 1 hour of our time or honor one signal from our body? This is where the real work of rebuilding begins, not in theory, but in practice. It begins with the first stone we lay for our new foundation. So here we stand. We have walked through the quiet museum of our own habits, and we have looked upon the artifacts of our past with compassionate, understanding eyes. We can now see the invisible chains. We can feel their familiar weight, and we hold the knowledge that we ourselves have been the co-authors of our own confinement. This awareness, as we said, is not a burden. It is the key. And now with this key in hand, we approach the lock. We face that question that echoes in the stillness. How do we begin? How do we take the first step to break a lifetime of conditioning? The answer is both profoundly simple and, for many of us, monumentally difficult. It begins with the mastery of a single 2-letter word. It begins with the sacred act of saying no. Now, let us pause here and be honest about the feeling that this word conjures. For the person who has spent a lifetime being agreeable, being the pleaser, being the one who smooths things over the word no, can feel like a declaration of war. It can feel sharp, cold, and aggressive in our mouths. The moment we consider saying it, a chorus of inner critics erupts. You're being selfish. You'll disappoint them. They will think you are unkind. They will stop loving you. You will be abandoned. This internal cacophony, this storm of anticipated catastrophe, is the resistance of the old self. It is the ego terrified of losing the approval it has learned to survive on. But there is another voice, isn't there? A much quieter one, a whisper from the soul that says, "But I am so tired. I have nothing left to give. I need to come home to myself." The first act of reclaiming your worth is to choose to listen to that whisper over the roar of your fear. The first sacred no you utter is not truly directed at the other person. It is a resounding yes to yourself. It is an affirmation of your own needs, your own limits, your own precious and finite energy. It is the first stone you will lay in the foundation of your inner citadel, and it is a promise. A promise that from this day forward, you will no longer abandon yourself. The Roman Stoic Seneca, who so keenly observed human anxiety, once wrote that, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Nowhere is this truer than in the moments leading up to setting a boundary. We play out elaborate dramatic scenes in our minds. We imagine arguments, tears, accusations of selfishness, the complete and utter collapse of a relationship. We torture ourselves with a future that exists only in our anxious thoughts. But what is the reality most of the time? Think back. What actually happens? There might be a moment of surprise, perhaps a flicker of disappointment in the other person's eyes. There might be a moment of awkward silence, and then life moves on. The imagined apocalypse fails to materialize. The friendship does not shatter. You are not cast out into the wilderness. The world does not end. But something inside of you does change. A small, warm spark of self-respect begins to glow, where there was once only a cold draft of anxiety. You have faced the dragon of your imagination, and you have discovered it was only a shadow. The key to harnessing this power is to start small. You do not need to begin by saying no to a life-altering request from your most important relationship. That is like trying to lift the heaviest weight in the gym on your very first day. It is a recipe for failure and reinforcement of the belief that you cannot do it. Instead, you begin with the small, manageable weights. You build the muscle of self-respect incrementally. What does this look like in practice? It might be the social invitation for next weekend that you are already dreading, the one you feel obligated to attend. The small, manageable act of courage is to simply reply, "Thank you so much for the invitation, but I won't be able to make it." That is a complete sentence. Notice what is missing. There is no apology, no lengthy excuse about a prior commitment. You have to invent no detailed explanation of your fatigue. Just a clear, calm, and respectful refusal. It might be the colleague who asks you to help with a task that is not your responsibility. The old you would have sighed internally and said, "Sure," resentfully adding to your own workload. The new you, the one laying the first stone, can say, "I wish I could help, but I don't have the capacity to take that on right now." Again, it is clean, it is honest. It honors both your own limits and their request. You are not rejecting them as a person. You are simply stating a fact about your own available resources. The ancient Romans had a deep respect for integrity for a person whose inner and outer worlds were aligned. One of the most steadfast examples of this was Cato the Younger, a Stoic statesman and a contemporary of Julius Caesar. Cato was legendary for his incorruptibility. While other politicians would bend their principles for political gain or social pressure, Cato's no was absolute. When he believed something was wrong, he refused to assent to it, regardless of the consequences. His no wasn't born of stubbornness or ego. It was the natural expression of his core values. He was not saying no to Caesar, he was saying yes to Cato. He understood that every time you compromise a core principle, you weaken the entire structure of your character. This is the deeper magic of the sacred no. Every time you use it to protect your well-being, you are saying yes to your own values. Think of it like a wise gardener. A gardener must prune a rosebush, cutting away the smaller, weaker stems. To an outsider, It might look like an act of violence of taking something away. But the gardener knows that this pruning is essential. It directs the plant's life force not into 100 mediocre blooms, but into a dozen magnificent, fragrant, and healthy roses. Saying no is the act of pruning your life. You are cutting away the obligations that drain your energy, the relationships that are not reciprocal, the commitments that do not align with your soul. And in doing so, you are not diminishing your life. You are concentrating its energy. You are creating the space and resources needed for the things that truly matter to you to flourish. When you say no to a draining social event, you are saying yes to a restorative evening of peace at home. When you say no to taking on extra work, you are saying yes to having the energy to be present with your family. When you say no to a conversation that feels disrespectful, you are saying yes to your own dignity. Each no is a powerful yes in disguise. So, the task before you this week is not to wage a war, but to conduct a small, quiet experiment. Find one low-stakes opportunity to practice your sacred no. Choose a situation where the imagined catastrophe is at its most ridiculous. Deliver the no with quiet kindness and without justification. And then, I want you to do something crucial. Pay attention. Pay attention not to the other person's reaction, but to your own. Notice the fear before you speak, and then notice the feeling that comes after. It might be a tremor of adrenaline, but underneath it you may just feel a quiet, solid sense of rightness, a feeling of coming home. That feeling is the sensation of the first stone settling into place. It is the sound of one link in an old chain gently falling away. It is proof that you are not powerless. You are the architect, the artisan, the sovereign of your own inner world. And you have just begun the beautiful life-affirming work of building your own fortress of peace, one sacred no at a time. And once you have reclaimed this small piece of territory, a new question arises. What will you do with this newfound space? What will you cultivate in the garden you have just begun to prune? And so you have done it. You have conducted your quiet experiment. You have spoken the sacred no, perhaps with a trembling voice, but you have spoken it nonetheless. And the world did not crumble. The catastrophic fireworks of your imagination failed to ignite. Instead, there was a moment of stillness, and in that stillness, you felt the first solid settling of a new foundation. You have successfully pruned a single draining branch from the garden of your life. But now, a new and unfamiliar sensation arises, the feeling of space. Where there was once an obligation, a draining conversation, a frantic rush to please, there is now an hour of quiet, a free evening, a pocket of unclaimed energy. For a person accustomed to being perpetually overdrawn on their resources, this surplus can feel strange, almost unnerving. The immediate temptation born from a lifetime of habit is to rush to fill it, to find another hole to plug another person, to please another task to busy yourself with. The silence can feel too loud. I invite you with great gentleness to resist this temptation. Do not be so quick to give away this precious territory you have just reclaimed. This space is not a vacuum to be filled. It is fertile ground. It is the sacred soil where you can finally begin to cultivate something new. For years, your focus has been outward, a constant expenditure of energy. The journey we are on now is about reversing that flow. It is about learning the forgotten art of reinvestment. It is about taking that reclaimed time, that conserved energy, that salvaged focus, and consciously, lovingly pouring it back into yourself. What does this reinvestment look like? It is not about embarking on an aggressive, punishing self-improvement regime. It is not another list of demanding things you should be doing. It is far kinder and more profound than that. It is about tending to your own inner garden with the same care you have so freely given to others. Let's start with the body, that loyal companion we have so often ignored. For so long, we have treated it like a workhorse, pushing it through exhaustion, feeding it whatever was fast and convenient, ignoring its pleas for rest. Reinvestment here is not about forcing yourself into a grueling fitness plan. It is about beginning to listen to it with respect. It is choosing to prepare a nourishing meal, not as a diet, but as a tangible act of saying, you are worthy of being well fed. It is going for a slow, meandering walk, not to burn calories, but to feel the sun on your skin and the solid ground beneath your feet. It is the radical act in our culture of perpetual productivity, of taking a nap when you are tired. It is about treating your body not as a machine to be optimized, but as a living, breathing part of you that deserves kindness, rest, and care. Then there is the mind. We have allowed our minds to become cluttered spaces filled with the noise of other people's dramas, the endless scroll of social media, and the constant low-grade anxiety of a life lived for others. Tending to this inner library means becoming a mindful curator of what you allow inside. It means taking 30 minutes of that reclaimed evening to finally open the book that has been gathering dust on your nightstand. It means choosing to listen to music that calms your soul instead of a news report that agitates it. It might mean learning something new, a language, an instrument, a piece of history, not for the sake of a promotion or to impress anyone, but for the pure, simple joy of expanding your own understanding. It is about discovering that silence is not empty. It is a space for your own thoughts to finally be heard. And what of the soul? For many of us, as we've journeyed through our 30s, 40s, and beyond, there is a part of ourselves we left behind like a beloved toy in a childhood attic. A passion, a hobby, a creative spark that was extinguished by the demands of real life. Perhaps you used to paint. Perhaps you loved to work with wood, to play the guitar, to write stories, to spend hours in the garden. This reclaimed energy is the water that can bring that dormant seed back to life. I encourage you to find that old passion. Dust it off. Give yourself permission to be a clumsy beginner again. You are not doing this to create a masterpiece or start a new career. You are doing it to reconnect with a forgotten part of your own identity. You are doing it to remember who you were before you became everything to everyone else. This practice of reinvestment is at its heart the pursuit of what the ancient Greek philosophers called eudaimonia. It's a word often translated as happiness, but it's much richer than that. It means human flourishing. It means living in a way that is congruent with your highest self. It is the feeling of deep contentment that comes from knowing you are living a life of purpose and virtue, tending to your own growth. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, provides a powerful lesson in this. He was a wealthy merchant who lost everything he owned in a shipwreck. He washed ashore in Athens with nothing. He could have seen this as the end. Instead, he wandered into a bookshop, encountered the philosophy of Socrates, and began a new life of study and teaching. He later said, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck." He took the catastrophe, the ultimate loss of external things, and reinvested his life into building his own character and wisdom. He turned the ultimate no from fortune into the ultimate yes to his own soul. This is what we are doing on a smaller scale. Every time we say no to an external drain, we are creating the opportunity to say yes to our own eudaimonia. Let's return to our artisan from the beginning of our journey. Now that they have stopped pleading with the indifferent observer, what do? They don't smash the vase. They don't abandon their craft. They return to their workshop. With their newfound time and focus, they clean their tools. They experiment with a new type of clay. They lose themselves for hours in the silent, focused joy of creation. They fall in love with the process again, not the uncertain outcome of applause. They are no longer creating to be validated. They are creating because it is who they are. They are tending their own genius. This is the invitation for you now, to return to your own workshop. To reinvest your precious reclaimed resources into nourishing your body, clearing your mind, and rekindling your soul. This is not selfish. It is the most generous act you can perform, because a person who is well-rested, mentally clear, and spiritually fulfilled has so much more to offer the world than someone who is running on empty. You cannot pour from an empty cup, as the saying goes. This is the work of refilling your cup, drop by precious drop. So, as you move through your days, look for the small opportunities to reinvest. Choose the walk over the scroll. Choose the book over the draining phone call. Choose 10 minutes of silence over filling the space with noise. See each of these choices not as an indulgence, but as a vital act of cultivation. You are the gardener, and you are finally tending to your own magnificent garden. And as you do this, something remarkable begins to happen. The garden begins to flourish in ways you couldn't have imagined. The roots grow deeper, the stem grows stronger, and a new quiet confidence begins to bloom. And it is this quiet confidence born not of ego, but of deep self-care that will fundamentally change how you carry yourself in the world. And so, the work continues. You have begun to prune the garden of your life, creating precious space. You have started the gentle, joyful work of reinvestment tending to your body, mind, and soul. And as you persist in these small, sacred acts of self-care, something remarkable almost imperceptibly at first begins to shift. A new feeling starts to bloom within you. It is not the loud, fragile bravado that so often passes for confidence in our world. It is something else entirely. It is quiet. It is solid. It is the unshakable confidence of a centered self. Let us be clear about what this confidence is and what it is not. The confidence our culture often sells us is brittle. It is built on a foundation of external things, a job title, a number in a bank account, the number of followers you have, the compliments you receive on your appearance. It is a house of cards that can be toppled by a single gust of wind, a layoff, a criticism, a rejection, the simple and inevitable process of aging. This external confidence requires constant maintenance. It needs to be fed with praise and propped up by success. It is by its very nature anxious because the things that sustain it can be taken away at any moment. The confidence we are speaking of now, the confidence that grows from the soil of self-reinvestment, is different. Its roots run deep into the bedrock of your own being. Its source is not external, it is purely internal. It is forged from the accumulated weight of promises kept to yourself. Think of it every time you honored your body's need for rest. You cast a vote for your own well-being. Every time you chose to read a book instead of engaging in draining drama, you cast a vote for your own mind. Every time you spoke your sacred no, you cast a vote for your own sovereignty. This new confidence is the quiet, powerful result of that inner election. You have, through your actions, elected yourself as the primary authority in your own life. This is the gravity of a centered self. Gravity as a force of nature does not need to announce itself. It does not shout or posture or demand attention. Its power is silent, effortless, and undeniable. It simply is, and it naturally organizes the world around it. A person who cultivates this inner confidence develops a similar kind of presence. They can walk into a room, and without saying a word, others can sense their stability. They are not needy. They are not seeking approval. They are not scanning the room to see how they measure up. They are simply present, inhabiting their own space with a calm and settled energy. They listen more than they speak, and when they do speak, their words have weight because they are not cluttered with the anxiety of seeking validation. Imagine a great mountain. It has stood for eons, weathered by countless storms, baked by the sun, frozen by the winter. Clouds, the fleeting opinions of others, drift past its peak. Storms, life's inevitable crises, rage against its slopes. But the mountain remains. It does not feel the need to justify its existence to the passing clouds. It does not shrink from the storm. Its strength is not in its ability to avoid the weather, but in its ability to endure it. Its core is unmoved. This is the nature of unshakable confidence. It is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of an unshakable core that difficulty cannot breach. This kind of confidence is often misunderstood as arrogance or aloofness, but it is actually the foundation for the deepest humility. The person with brittle external confidence is terrified of being wrong, of admitting they don't know something, because their entire sense of self is built on the performance of being capable and smart. But the person whose confidence is internal is not threatened by their own imperfections. Their worth is not on the line. They are free to be curious, to be a learner, to say those three most liberating words, "I don't know." Perhaps the greatest historical example of this was the philosopher Socrates. In ancient Athens, he was a man who possessed no wealth, held no office, and wrote no books. Yet his influence was so profound that it has shaped the course of Western thought for over 2 millennia. His confidence was legendary, but it was of the quiet, mountain-like variety. When he was put on trial for his life, accused of corrupting the youth, his defense was not a desperate plea for mercy. It was a calm, reasoned explanation of his life's mission, the pursuit of truth and wisdom. He told the jury he was not afraid of their verdict, because they could only harm his body, not his soul, and the state of his soul was the only thing that truly mattered to him. This is a man whose inner citadel was impregnable. His confidence was so profound that it was rooted in the famous paradox, "I know that I know nothing." This wasn't false modesty. It was the ultimate expression of intellectual humility. He was secure enough in his own being to be perpetually open to be the eternal student. He He knew that his value did not come from having all the answers, but from his unwavering commitment to asking the important questions. He was a living embodiment of the centered self. This unshakable state is the natural result of a life lived in accordance with the Stoic principles we have been exploring. It is the peace that comes when you have truly deeply internalized the difference between what you can and cannot control. You stop wasting an ounce of energy trying to manage other people's perceptions of you. That is the weather, the passing clouds. Instead, you pour all of your energy into the cultivation of your own character, your own responses, your own inner garden. You become the mountain. As you continue on this path of reinvestment, you will begin to notice this gravity in your own life. You will find yourself less rattled by criticism. You will feel less of a need to defend or explain your choices. You will find a new stillness in your interactions, a sense that you are on your own side, first and foremost. You are no longer the trembling vase hoping not to be broken. You are the artisan calm and centered in your workshop, aware of your own skill and worth regardless of who is watching. This confidence changes everything. It changes the way you walk, the way you make eye contact, the way you carry yourself through the world. But, most profoundly, it changes the way you communicate. You no longer speak from a place of want, but from a place of wholeness. You no longer listen through a filter of insecurity, but with a lens of open curiosity. And it is this transformation from anxious petitioner to calm sovereign in the realm of your own life that we will explore next as we uncover how this new confidence allows you to say so much more by often saying so much less. Of course, here is part 6, continuing the narrative from the foundation of quiet confidence to its expression in our communication. It flows directly from the end of part 5. The mountain stands. The inner citadel is under construction, its first stones laid with intention and care. And from this growing fortress of self-respect, a quiet, unshakable confidence has begun to radiate, changing the very way you inhabit your own skin. This is a profound internal transformation, but its effects are not confined to your inner world. They begin to ripple outward, and one of the first places this new gravity is felt is in the way you speak, in the way you listen, in the way you communicate. You begin to discover the eloquence of economy, the art of saying so much more by saying so much less. Let us first consider the communication style of the uncentered self, the self we are gently leaving behind. Anxious energy needs an outlet, and it often finds one in a torrent of words. We overtalk. We fill every available silence with chatter because silence feels like a judgment. We ramble circling a point without ever landing on it, hoping the listener will somehow excavate our meaning from a mountain of verbiage. We use a dozen softening apologetic phrases before making a simple request. We over-explain our decisions as we've discussed laying out a complex legal case for our own choices, desperate for the jury of our peers to approve. This is not communication, it is a broadcast of anxiety. It is the sound of a person who is not yet convinced of their own validity, and so they try to convince the world with the sheer volume of their speech. As you become more centered, you lose the frantic need to fill the air. You begin to understand that your presence itself has weight. It doesn't need to be propped up by constant noise. You start to embody a new way of communicating, guided by a few simple, powerful principles. The first is a newfound friendship with silence. The confident person is not afraid of the pause. In a conversation, a deliberate pause is a tool of immense power. It conveys thoughtfulness. It says, "I am truly considering what you just said," rather than simply waiting for your turn to speak. It gives your own words, when they do come, a space to land and be absorbed. And it demonstrates a supreme level of comfort and control. You are not rushing. You are not flustered. You are the calm center of the exchange, and you will proceed at a pace that is deliberate and your own. The person who is comfortable with silence is the person who is leading the conversation, whether they are speaking or not. The second principle is a devotion to clarity over complexity. Insecurity often hides behind big words, convoluted sentences, and vague, abstract language. We think it makes us sound intelligent or sophisticated. In reality, it is often a way to avoid taking a clear, committed stance. It takes courage to be simple and direct. It takes confidence to say, "The answer is no," instead of, "Well, given the current circumstances and my projected bandwidth, I'm not sure I can optimally commit to that endeavor at this time." The first is a clear statement of reality. The second is a cloud of fog. When you are rooted in your own worth, you no longer feel the need to hide behind such fog. You speak plainly and with precision, because your only goal is to communicate the truth as you see it, not to manage the other person's impression of you. This leads to a third, more subtle shift. You begin to ask more questions and make fewer declarations. The need to always have the answer, to be the expert, to hold forth with pronouncements, is a function of the ego. It's a performance. The truly confident person, like Socrates, is secure enough in their own intelligence to be deeply curious. In a difficult meeting or a tense personal conversation, instead of arguing or declaring your position, you might simply ask a quiet, insightful question. Can you help me understand your thinking on that? Or, what is the outcome you are hoping for here? These questions are not passive. They are profoundly powerful. They gently shift the dynamic, encouraging others to examine their own positions, and they reveal far more about the situation than a loud argument ever could. It is the communication style of a guide, not a dictator. The ancient Spartans, a people known for their discipline and courage, were also masters of this verbal economy. Their concise, powerful statements came to be known as laconic phrases. There is a story that when King Philip of Macedon, father of Alexander the Great, was invading Greece, he sent a threatening message to the leaders of Sparta. The message said, "You are advised to submit without further delay, for if I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raze your city." The Spartan magistrates sent back a reply that has echoed through history. It contained only one word, "if." In that single word, they conveyed more defiance, more courage, and more unshakable confidence than a 1,000-word speech ever could. They did not need to bluster or threaten. Their belief in themselves was so absolute that it could be contained in a syllable. This is the power you are now beginning to cultivate, the power of the simple statement that needs no follow-up. When you state a boundary, "That doesn't work for me," and then you stop talking, the silence that follows is where the boundary solidifies. The absence of your usual rambling justification is what gives the statement its finality. The Roman Stoic Epictetus advised his followers to let silence be your general rule, and to speak only what was necessary. When a person who is usually quiet chooses to speak, everyone in the room listens. Their words have value because they are scarce. Think once more of our artisan. In the beginning, they frantically explained the beauty of their vase. Now, imagine them in their workshop, centered and confident in their own skill. A visitor comes in, picks up the vase, and says, "It's nice, but it seems a bit delicate." The artisan of our past would have launched into a defense. The artisan we are becoming simply smiles, faintly gives a slight nod, and remains silent. They do not need to explain. The vase is what it is. Its value is inherent. Their silence says more than words ever could. It says, "I know what this is. I know its worth. Your opinion of it is your own business and has no bearing on its reality or on mine." This is your new practice. In your conversations, begin to notice your own impulse to overtalk. See if you can hold back. See if you can embrace the pause. See if you can answer a complex question with a simple, direct statement. See if you can resist the urge to justify a decision you have already made. This is not about being cold or withholding. It is about understanding that your words are precious. They are tools to be used with purpose and precision. When you treat your words with this much respect, the world begins to respect them, and you as well. You have learned to guard your time and energy. Now, you are learning to guard your words. With this growing mastery over your inner state and your outer communication, you are becoming a fortress. But a fortress must also be vigilant about who it allows inside its walls. And this brings us to the next and perhaps most difficult stage of our journey, assessing the people in our lives and making conscious, courageous choices about who is worthy of our precious, well-guarded energy. You have been engaged in the sacred work of rebuilding. You have laid the foundation of your inner citadel with the stone of the sacred no. You have begun to tend your inner garden, reinvesting your precious energy back into your own flourishing. You have felt the quiet gravity of a new, unshakable confidence settle within you. And you have started to communicate from this place of centered strength, where your words are measured and your silence has meaning. You have become a fortress, a sovereign in the realm of your own life. But a fortress, no matter how strong its walls, is only as peaceful as the land it governs. And a sovereign is only as effective as the counsel they keep. We now arrive at the stage of our journey where we must turn our clear, compassionate, and newly sharpened gaze to the people who occupy our lives. We must apply the same loving honesty we've shown ourselves to our relationships. We must become vigilant guardians of the gates, making conscious, courageous choices about who is granted access to the precious, well-guarded energy of our inner world. This is for many the most difficult work of all. It involves attachments forged in the fires of history, bonds of family and friendships that have lasted for decades. But as you have grown and changed, you may have begun to notice a painful truth. Not everyone is capable of or interested in making this journey with you. Some people are not merely neutral passengers in the vessel of your life. They are dead weight. They are anchors lodged in the mud of a past you are trying to leave behind, holding you back from the open waters of your own potential. Let us, with that same gentle archaeological curiosity, identify what this dead weight can look like. It is not always obvious or malicious. Often it is subtle, cloaked in familiarity and obligation. There is the unilateral taker. This is the person whose name on your phone screen immediately elicits a sigh. You know the call will be a request, a drama to be solved, an emotional fire for you to extinguish. They draw endlessly from your well of empathy and support. But when your own bucket is empty, they are nowhere to be found. The relationship is a one-way street, and you are the only one paying the toll. There is the subtle underminer. This is the so-called friend or family member who greets your new passion with a comment like, "Oh, that's a cute little hobby." They dismiss your growth, your joy, your ambition with faint praise or a patronizing smile. They prefer the you from before the one who was less confident, less happy, more manageable. Your flourishing is a mirror to their own stagnation, and so they will consciously or not try to dim your light so their own shadow feels less pronounced. There is the perpetual victim. Their life is a never-ending opera of crisis and misfortune, and they have cast you in the role of permanent rescuer. They complain but never act. They seek your advice but never take it. They drain your compassion by refusing to take ownership of their own life. To remain their rescuer is not an act of kindness. It is an act of enabling, and it costs you dearly. And perhaps most painfully, there are those who simply disrespect the new you. They were comfortable with the people-pleaser, the one who never had boundaries, and they will relentlessly test the walls of your new fortress. They will mock your no, push against your limits, and try to guilt you back into the old familiar dance. They are not adapting to your growth. They are actively fighting against it. To keep these anchors tied to your ship is not a sign of loyalty or kindness. It is an act of self-sabotage. You cannot soar to new heights if you are chained to the ground. The Stoic philosophers understood this with a pragmatic clarity. Their primary goal was the pursuit of virtue in a tranquil mind. They knew that who you surround yourself with is one of the most critical factors in achieving this. Seneca wrote with great emphasis on choosing one's friends, advising to associate with those who will make a better man of you. He saw friendship as a mutual process of learning and improvement. A relationship with an anchor is not mutual. It is a slow, one-sided sinking. Imagine your life is a long sea voyage. Your energy is your fuel. Your time is your provision. It is not cruel to refuse passage to someone who insists on drilling holes in the hull of your boat. It is a necessary act of survival. It is an act of responsibility to your own voyage and to the other crew members who are rowing alongside you. So, how does one drop such a heavy anchor, especially when it has been attached for so long? It does not always require a dramatic confrontational scene. Often, it is a quiet, deliberate process. For some, it is the slow fade. You stop being the initiator. You allow more time to pass between replies. You become less available for the dramas, less accessible for the one-sided requests. You gently, gradually create more and more distance, allowing the connection to naturally wither from a lack of the energy you once provided. For others, a final boundary test is required. You state your new terms of engagement clearly and calmly. I value our friendship, but I am no longer willing to be the sole audience for constant negativity. Or, I can no longer engage in conversations where I feel disrespected. If that continues, I will have to end the call. This is a final, generous offer for the person to step up and meet the new you. If they respect the boundary, the relationship may be transformed into something healthier. If they cross it, they have made the decision for you. They have shown you that they are unwilling or unable to respect your sovereignty. And for the most toxic and deeply entrenched dynamics, The only path to peace is the clean cut. This is the courageous, painful surgery of severing a tie completely. It is an act that can be accompanied by immense feelings of guilt, grief, and self-doubt. Society has conditioned us to believe that ending a relationship, especially with family or a long-term friend, is a sign of failure or cruelty. But I want to reframe that for you. It is an act of radical self-preservation. It is choosing to save the entire ship rather than going down with a single destructive passenger. It is the ultimate testament to your own worth, a declaration that your peace, your sanity, and your future are not negotiable. This process is a form of grieving. You are grieving the relationship you wished you had the potential that was never realized. Allow yourself that grief, but do not confuse the pain of the surgery with the sickness it is meant to cure. The brief, sharp pain of letting go is the price of a lifetime of freedom from the dull, chronic ache of being weighed down. As you stand on the deck of your ship and watch that heavy anchor fall away, a feeling of lightness you may not have felt in years will begin to fill you. Your ship will sit higher in the water. It will be faster, more maneuverable, and ready to catch the winds of new opportunities. Your social world may feel smaller for a time, but its quality will be infinitely richer. You have not created a void, you have created a space that can now be filled with people who celebrate your light, who respect your boundaries, and who are willing to row alongside you towards a shared horizon of growth and mutual respect. The anchor has been dropped. You have made the difficult, courageous choice to release the dead weight that was holding you in place. And now, on the deck of your ship, you feel a profound new lightness. The vessel of your life sits higher in the water, ready and responsive. But you may also notice the quiet, the space. Where there were once demanding voices, there is now a gentle stillness. Where there was once the clutter of draining obligations, there is now an expanse of open time. It is human nature to feel a little unnerved by this emptiness, to feel a pang of loneliness. The temptation is to rush to fill this new space, to quickly recruit new passengers for your voyage, lest you feel alone. But this space you have created is not a void, it is a sanctuary. And a sanctuary is not something you fill with just anyone. It is a sacred ground, and you are now its discerning architect. Having done the hard work of clearing the land, you now have the rare and beautiful opportunity to design the life and the community you truly want. This is the architecture of true connection. For too long, many of us have assembled our social circles by accident. Friendships were formed through proximity, the person who sat next to us in school, the colleague in the next cubicle, the neighbor across the street. These relationships, while not necessarily bad, are often built on a foundation of shared circumstances, rather than shared souls. As we grow and evolve, we come to realize that we crave something deeper. We are no longer looking for a crew of convenience. We are looking for a circle of equals. The great philosopher Aristotle, in his timeless wisdom, identified 3 types of friendship. Understanding them is like having a master blueprint for our new social architecture. First, he said, there are friendships of utility. These are based on mutual benefit. Your mechanic, your accountant, the colleague you collaborate with on a project. These are necessary and valuable, but they are based on what you can do for each other. Second, there are friendships of pleasure. These are your drinking buddies, your tennis partners, the people you laugh with at parties. They are built on shared fun and good times. These too add joy to life. But Aristotle spoke of a third, higher form of friendship, which he called a friendship of the good, or a friendship of virtue. This is the rarest and most profound of all connections. It is not based on what someone can do for you or how much fun they are. It is based on a mutual admiration for each other's character. It is a bond between 2 people who see the good in each other and who want to help each other become the best possible versions of themselves. This is the connection we now have the space to cultivate. The foundation stone of this new architecture is the principle of reciprocity. A true connection is a two-way street of energy. It is a well from which both people can draw and to which both people contribute. Think of the draining relationships you have just released. They were pipelines flowing in only one direction. In this new phase, you will become exquisitely sensitive to this flow of energy. You will notice the people who not only take your support, but who offer it freely in return. The ones who not only speak, but also listen deeply and with genuine curiosity. This is not a transactional accounting. It is an intuitive feeling of balance and mutual care. The walls of our new structure are built with the mortar of shared values. While shared interests are enjoyable, shared values are sustaining. You might love hiking with someone, but if they do not share your core value of integrity or kindness, the connection will always feel shallow. As you have been doing this inner work, you have become more intimate with your own core values. Now you begin to look for those values reflected in others. You seek out honesty, compassion, a commitment to growth, a sense of responsibility. When you connect with someone on the level of shared values, you are building a house of brick, not of straw. And the roof, the part that protects and shelters, is the celebration of each other's growth. The subtle underminer, as we know, feels threatened by your light. But a true friend, a member of your circle of equals, acts like a mirror, reflecting your light back at you even brighter. They are your most enthusiastic cheerleader. They are not envious of your success. They are inspired by it. They champion your dreams. They encourage you to take the healthy risk. They remind you of your strength when you have forgotten it. This is the friend who, when you tell them you have finally started that project you've been dreaming of, doesn't say, "Do you really have time for that?" but instead says, "That's fantastic. How can I support you?" As you continue to live from your centered, confident self, a wonderful and almost magical thing begins to happen. You stop having to search for these people so desperately. You become a magnet, like attracts like. Your quiet confidence, your clarity, your respect for your own time and energy. These qualities are immensely attractive to other people who possess them. They recognize a kindred spirit. The desperate, needy energy you once had may have attracted other needy people, or those who sought to take advantage of it. But your new calm, self-sufficient energy will now attract other self-sufficient, generous, and healthy individuals. You will find that the right people simply start to appear in your life, drawn in by the gravity of the person you have become. This does not mean we become elitist or unkind. The Stoics spoke of the cosmopolis, the idea that we are all citizens of one single global community. So, while we are highly selective about who we invite into our inner sanctum, our fortress, we treat everyone we encounter with a baseline of dignity, kindness, and respect. We are building a strong, nourishing home base, not to hide from the world, but to give us the strength and stability to engage with it more compassionately and effectively. So, be patient. Do not rush to fill the quiet. Continue to invest in yourself, to tend your own garden. Let your life be an open invitation to people of character. When you meet someone new, listen more than you speak. Pay attention to how you feel in their presence. Do you feel energized or drained? Do you feel seen or performative? Do you feel respected or tolerated? Trust that intuitive wisdom you have been cultivating. You are no longer collecting acquaintances. You are curating a personal board of directors, a small trusted council of peers who will support, challenge, and inspire you. Your social circle may become smaller than it has ever been, but its depth, its strength, and its truth will be greater than you ever imagined. This is the joy and the reward of the courageous work you have done. You have cleared the space, and now you can watch with wonder and gratitude as it begins to be filled, not by accident, but by beautiful, resonant, and purposeful design. You have walked a long road. You have cleared the land, laid a new foundation, and begun the conscious, careful architecture of a life of integrity. Your inner world has become a place of peace, tended with care. Your outer world is now a curated circle of equals, a community of mutual respect and support. A deep sense of calm and order has begun to settle into your bones. It is a well-earned peace, and it is right at this moment when we feel the most stable that we must prepare for the fundamental nature of life itself, its inherent unpredictability. The peace we have cultivated does not grant us immunity from hardship. It does not build a shield that repels all of life's sorrows. The rains will still fall, the winds will still howl, a career will take an unexpected turn, a relationship will face a crisis, our health or the health of someone we love will falter, plans will crumble. This is not a pessimistic outlook. It is the clear-eyed realism that the Stoics championed. They did not seek to build a life free from problems. They sought to build a person who was strong enough to face any problem with grace and courage. For what is the purpose of building a mighty fortress if it has never been tested by a storm? What is the value of a ship that has never left the safety of the harbor? The work we have done in setting boundaries and reinvesting in ourselves, in cultivating confidence, has not been for a life of ease. It has been a training, a preparation for these very moments. It has been to forge within us a resilience so profound that we can look upon the inevitable obstacles of life not as terrifying interruptions, but as the very path itself. The great Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius captured this world-altering idea in his private journals. While leading armies battling a plague and facing political betrayal, he wrote this to himself: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Let us sit with the sheer radical power of that statement. He is not saying to simply tolerate the obstacle or to find a way around it. He is saying that the obstacle is the way, the challenge is the curriculum, the difficulty is the material we have been given to work with, to practice our philosophy and build our character. Imagine a powerful river flowing towards the sea. On its journey, it encounters a massive boulder that has fallen into its path. The river does not stop. It does not despair. Its nature is to flow, and so it flows. It presses against the boulder, finding the small cracks and fissures. It flows around its sides. It rises, flowing over its top. In its persistent, patient interaction with the obstacle, the river not only continues its journey, but it also transforms the boulder, smoothing its rough edges over centuries. The boulder does not defeat the river. It reveals the river's immense and patient power. You are the river. The obstacle is the boulder. When a setback occurs, the old you, the uncentered you, would have seen it as a catastrophe, a failure, a sign that you should give up. Your entire sense of well-being was tied to the outcome, to getting the promotion, to the relationship, succeeding to the plan, working out perfectly. But the person you are becoming is learning to shift their focus from the outcome, which is never fully in our control, to the process of how we respond. The goal is no longer simply to succeed, but to act with virtue, with courage, with wisdom in the face of whatever happens. When the promotion is given to someone else, it is an opportunity to practice generosity of spirit and to reevaluate your own path. When a project fails, it is an opportunity to practice resilience and to learn from your mistakes. When you are treated unfairly, it is an opportunity to practice dignity and restraint. The obstacle becomes the arena for your virtue to shine. A powerful tool the Stoics used to prepare for this was an exercise known as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This doesn't mean being a morbid pessimist. It is a pragmatic psychological fire drill for the soul. In moments of calm, you would take the time to calmly and rationally contemplate the things that could go wrong. What if I lost my job? What if this relationship ended? What if I became ill? You wouldn't dwell on it to create anxiety, but to do two things: first, to appreciate what you have right now, and second, to mentally rehearse how you would respond with character. By visualizing the storm in advance, you rob it of its greatest weapon, the element of shock and surprise. When you have already considered the possibility and resolved to meet it with courage, its arrival is less terrifying and more like the arrival of a challenge you have been training for. There is a wonderful, more modern story of this mindset in action. In 1914, Thomas Edison's entire research facility in New Jersey, containing almost all of his life's work, burned to the ground. He was 67 years old. As he stood watching the flames, instead of collapsing in despair, he calmly said to his son, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." When his son expressed concern, Edison replied, "It's all right. We've just got rid of a lot of rubbish." The next morning, looking at the ruins, he told a reporter, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." This is a man who saw the obstacle as the way. The destruction was not an end. It was a brutally efficient clearing of the slate. He did not have control over the fire, but he had absolute control over his perception of it. He chose to see it not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. And he was back to work within weeks. This is the strength that is now available to you. It is the culmination of all your inner work. When life presents you with its inevitable challenges, you will not be thrown into the same panic and despair. You will have the capacity to pause, to breathe, and to access that quiet inner citadel. From that place of strength, you can look upon the obstacle and ask the transformative question: how can I use this? What virtue is this situation asking me to practice? What opportunity for strength, for wisdom, for compassion is hidden within this difficulty? You will discover that your resilience is a muscle. Every time you face a challenge with this mindset, the muscle gets stronger. You will find that your peace is no longer a fragile thing, dependent on perfect external conditions. It is a deep, abiding strength, a portable sanctuary you carry within you, a fortress that can withstand any storm, because it has learned to use the very energy of the storm to reinforce its own walls. You have moved beyond simply seeking a good life. You are now capable of creating good from any life you are given. And with this profound realization, we arrive at the final destination of our journey, the ultimate freedom of learning, not just to accept our fate, but to love it. We have traveled far. We began in a place of pain, holding out our fragile masterpiece to a world that seemed indifferent, feeling the sting of our worth being overlooked. From that place, we embarked on a sacred journey inward. We mapped the terrain of our own self-abandonment and found the courage to say our first sacred no. We learned the joyful art of reinvestment, tending to the garden of our own being. A quiet, unshakable confidence began to grow, a gravity of the centered self that changed the very way we communicated. With this new strength, we did the hard work of clearing our lives, dropping the heavy anchors of toxic relationships to create space. And into that space, we began the conscious architecture of true connection, building a circle of equals. We have just faced the truth that life will always bring storms, but we have learned that the obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. We have learned to use the very energy of life's challenges to make us stronger, wiser, and more virtuous. We have built the fortress. We have chosen our allies. We have trained for the storm. And now, we stand at the final precipice. Not a cliff of fear, but a vista of ultimate freedom. We are ready to embrace the final, most profound teaching of this philosophy, amor fati. A Latin phrase, its literal translation is a love of fate. This is not resignation. Resignation is passive-heavy, tinged with defeat. It is the sigh of the person who says, I guess I have no choice but to endure this. Amor fati is the opposite. It is active. It is joyful. It is a powerful, enthusiastic embrace of everything that happens in our lives, the beautiful and the painful, the victory and the defeat, the pleasure and the sorrow, as if we had chosen it ourselves. It is looking upon the entirety of your story, with all its twists and turns, and saying with every fiber of your being, yes, this is my life. I would not have it any other way. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who made this concept the cornerstone of his life's work, called it his formula for human greatness. He wrote that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, but love it. To not merely bear it, but to love it. This is the radical alchemy that turns a life of suffering into a life of meaning. Imagine your life as a magnificent, impossibly complex tapestry. From our limited perspective here on the backside, all we can see is a chaotic jumble of threads. We see knots, loose ends, and patches of ugly dark color that seem to make no sense. We pull at these threads, wishing they were different. We lament the dark patches, wishing for more gold and silver. But from the other side, the side of the weaver, all of these threads, every single one, come together to form a beautiful, unique, and coherent picture. The dark thread of a past sorrow was necessary to provide the contrast for the bright thread of a future joy. The knot of a difficult challenge was essential to hold the entire structure together. Amor fati is the act of faith and wisdom, to trust that the weaver knows what they are doing. It is to love the tangled threads on your side because you know they are creating a masterpiece on the other. Marcus Aurelius used a different metaphor. He said the soul that has achieved this state is like a great blazing fire. It makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. A small weak fire is extinguished by a log being thrown on it, but a great fire consumes the log and uses it as fuel, leaping even higher and burning even brighter. A person living with amor fati takes everything life throws at them, a success, a failure, a kindness, a betrayal, and uses it all as fuel for their own inner light. Nothing is wasted. Everything is nourishment. This is the ultimate freedom. It is the liberation from the tyranny of if only. If only I had gotten that job. If only that person hadn't left me. If only I hadn't made that mistake. This constant bargaining with the past is the source of so much of our anguish. Amor fati severs these chains to a past that cannot be changed. It anchors you fully and completely in the reality of the present moment, and it declares that this moment, whatever it holds, is perfect, not because it is easy or pleasant, but because it is. It is your life unfolding as it must. And now, let us bring this full circle. Let us return to the very beginning of our journey together, that sharp, specific pain of holding out your vase and having its worth ignored by someone whose opinion you cherished. For so long, that may have felt like a wound, a scar, a moment of shame or deficit. But can you look back on it now from this new vista? Can you see that painful moment not as a wound, but as a gift? That indifference was the catalyst. That dismissal was the shipwreck that washed you ashore in a new land of self-inquiry. That ache was the sacred signal that your strategy of seeking worth outside of yourself was no longer serving you. Without that specific pain, you may never have embarked on this journey. You would not have built your fortress or pruned your garden or learned to face the storms with courage. That moment of feeling undervalued was in fact the most valuable moment of all. It was the obstacle that became the way. Can you find it in your heart now to not just forgive that moment, but to thank it? To not just accept it, but to love it? To see it as the essential dark thread that made the rest of this beautiful tapestry possible? This is the final piece. To know your worth so completely that you need no one to validate it. To be the calm, centered sovereign of your own life. To meet any challenge with grace and resilience. And to look upon the whole messy, beautiful, tragic, and glorious story of your one and only life, and to love it. To love all of it. You are the artisan. You are the vase. And you are the quiet, unwavering witness to its priceless, unchangeable, and profound beauty. Your work is not to convince the world of your value. Your work is simply to live it. Go now and live it fully.